Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports.
And good evening, everybody, and welcome into our SEC Media Days edition of Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports, alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com. I'm WVUA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris. Rodney, I got to tell you, I wasn't even in Atlanta, and I'm worn out. It has been a hectic day. You know, Alabama at SEC Media Days, it's a big event. All 4 days are big. Every school's represented, but there's just something different about Alabama Day. You know that.
Oh,
You've been to these things. And let's get to it. All right, Alabama, as I mentioned, took the stage at SEC Media Days at the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta on Tuesday morning. And, man, there's the man. There's Nick Saban. You know, a lot of people are too young to remember this. Remember those old E.F. Hutton commercials? When E.F. Hutton talks, people listen. That's Nick Saban at, you know, any football event. When he talks, people listen. There's Jordan Battle, Will Anderson, and Bryce Young there as well. A lot of topics came across for Coach Saban, and he talked about them. NIL. He said his guys at Alabama made close to $3 million in name, image, and likeness deals. He talked about the expansion of conferences, you know, all those top topics. And NIL has been a topic for a while that he feels like needs to be regulated. Let me bring Rodney in for a little discussion before we get to a little bit more from Media Days with Stu McCann. All right, Coach said again today, and he said, and I listened to it all this morning, Rod. You probably, I know you did too as well. And he was very reserved. He was very focused, as he always is, very measured, low key. But the message that I took was, this is the University of Alabama, and I'm Nick Saban. And I'm not saying that he was trying to boast, but that's what I read into it. No matter what comes at us, whether it's RPOs, whether it's changing the rules on the field, whether it's coaches having to stay off the road in terms of recruiting, whether it's NIL, whether it's the transfer portal, we're going to be fine. We're going to adjust. We're going to do what we need to do. We're the best program in the country. Having said that, he once again pointed out, and I think rightfully so, that NIL was not created to give high school football players $8 and $9 million to come to a particular school. It was created to help players across the board get deals so they can benefit financially from playing college athletics. And that message, he hit on it again today. And I think he's been patient, but I think he is clearly at a point where he feels like something needs to be done, I think, before this 2024 recruiting cycle. I think he's accepted, Rod, that he's going to have to sign this 2023 class with some schools offering $8 and $9 million for players. But by next recruiting cycle, I get the impression he wants something done.
Well, I think that's certainly the hope. I mean, you know, I've talked to some people, Gary, that some NIL experts, and they think the model that Alabama has with their collective is going to be the kind of the elite model, the one that every other school, every other program will emulate. But, you know, this may not change for 18 to 24 months is kind of the expectation. Hopefully, as you said, by the 2024 signing period, maybe things have changed. But right now it's where we are. And the thing about it is, you talked about what Nick Saban said. You know, we're Alabama. We're going to make the adjustments that we have to make. And even though it has hurt them on a few players, Alabama's doing extremely well in recruiting.
Absolutely. More on that coming up. All right, now let's get to Stu McCann in Atlanta. Certainly, Rod, there have been question marks regarding Alabama because when you set the standard up here, when you make it to the national championship game and don't win it, you know, a lot of people aren't happy. You know, as I've said before, there'd be a lot of programs around the country, they'd be putting billboards up and having parades for what Alabama accomplished last year, winning the SEC and playing for the national championship, but not for Alabama. Now, the challenge is with a lot of missing pieces from last year's team to get back not only to play in the national championship game, but to win it all. WVUA 23 and Tider Insider TV Stu McCann has the story from the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta.
Safe to say the new guys have flashed this offseason. Jordan Battle says the hype around Tyler Hale's speed is true. He is that fast. And Georgia Tech transfer Jahmyr Gibbs has the speed and the instincts.
We have a class together. So Jahmyr's a cool guy. On the field, he's a great back. He's fast, elusive, and he can also catch the ball. So he's a good matchup for linebackers as well. And our linebackers are getting better.
He does a great job of pressing holes and, you know, getting the defense to commit to things and, you know, making a cut.
As much as the offensive skill has hit, the secondary hasn't. But it's not for lack of effort or talent. It's for lack of opportunity.
Kool-Aid has been injured. Kyrie was injured. So those guys have had limited work from spring practice, until now.
Not surprising, the offensive line is also a position that still needs to be assessed once fall practice begins. There's a lot of players to go through to figure out who is going to be the answer at offensive tackle. These were the guys who were working out there in the spring: Kendall Randolph, J.C. Latham, Amari Kite, Tommy Brockermeyer, and Tyler Booker. Now Tyler Steen joins the mix. The answer's there. It's just figuring out who is going to be the answer. Local in Atlanta, Stu McCann for Tider Insider Television.
Great job, Stu. And now it's time for Coach Talk. And earlier we talked about Coach Saban speaking to the media really in an organized press conference fashion for the first time since the SEC spring meetings in early June down in Sandestin. And he was asked about the upcoming SEC schedule realignment and the future of the conference and the possibility that the SEC could extend eventually to 18 or even 20 teams, these quote-unquote super conferences. Well, Greg Sankey said yesterday he already thinks the SEC is a super conference. I agree. And that the conference is in no hurry to extend past or to expand past 16 teams. Here's Coach Saban from today on the SEC, the kind of league it is, and the future of college football in regards to expansion.
I know one thing for sure is we have a great league. We've made 2 really positive additions to our league that are going to come online in a few years. I think there's a lot of underlying dynamics from a business standpoint that could impact and affect, how this happens, if it does happen in the future. But for right now, we have 14 teams in our league for the next couple of years, and we have some really, really good teams in our league. It's a very competitive league. You got to be on task each and every week that you play, and that's kind of what we're trying to stay focused on.
All right, Rod. As I said earlier, Coach Saban always very measured. Sankey said the same thing yesterday. We're good right now. And I think that for the Big Ten, after the SEC announced that Oklahoma and Texas were coming in, they did the, we're going to have this, this gentleman's agreement with the other conferences. We're not going to expand. They expanded as soon as they could with USC and UCLA. I think for the SEC, and I think Coach Saban said that, we're a strong league. I don't think the SEC wants to look like, hey, just because the Big Ten expanded, that we're going to expand again. We'll take our time. We don't want to expand for the sake of expanding. I really expect the SEC, and I've said this for some time, when Texas and Oklahoma come in, to stay at 16 teams for a while and kind of navigate and see where the landscape goes. I wouldn't doubt that at some point in time there's another expansion, but I don't think it's coming anytime soon.
Well, I think some of the reports initially when the Pac or the Big 12, Big 10 made their move, Gary, I think some of those were knee-jerk type reactions in terms of the reports that the SEC would, instantly, expand further. But I don't think there's any reason to do that. I don't think there's any rush to do that. Obviously, it doesn't seem like there's a rush on the part of the SEC commissioner to make a move in terms of expansion. Eventually, yeah, I think that is going to happen. In the next 2 years, maybe. I don't see that happening probably before then.
All right, and a word before we get to the break on Stu had a great package, I thought, on what this team is looking to do. There are a lot of key pieces to replace. But when you look at the freshmen coming in, you look at the players returning that are looking for an opportunity, and you look at the transfer portal, I think this Alabama team is set up to make a run for another national championship.
Absolutely. I mean, they have all the pieces, Gary. I think that the one thing we've talked about, they've got to get the offensive tackles situated. As Stu pointed out, they've got a lot of young players at the wide receiver position, but fortunately, 2 outstanding transfers in Tyler Harrell and Jermaine Burton. We talked about Jahmyr Gibbs in that running back room. This is going to be an explosive offense. And when you look at all the 2 best pass rushers in the country, Dallas Turner, Will Anderson, and Chris Braswell, too. He's going to make a major impact this year as well. So I look front to back, that defense, I think, is going to be really, really strong.
And a player in Bryce Young, the quarterback, tried to join Archie Griffin from Ohio State in the mid-'70s as the only 2 players ever to win back-to-back Heisman trophies. Well, still to come on Tider Insider Television, we'll update you on the Major League Baseball player draft and what Alabama players and Alabama signees were taken in the draft this week. And the Crimson Tide football program has landed its first running back commit for 2023. And boy, he is, as you can see right there, one of the best. More on his commitment and how it might impact another top running back that Alabama is recruiting. All that coming up. Plus, later on, we'll be getting to your phone calls, emails, and tweets. The information, as you see on your screen, always the same. Go ahead and interact with Tider Insider. Give us a call, 205-348-WVOA. That's 348-9882. You can email us at the address on your screen, or you can even tweet at us. Just use that hashtag TITV. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide and has been doing so for over 20 years. Tider Insider TV will return right after this timeout. And welcome back to Tider Insider Television, sponsored as always by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. And we're really appreciative of Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports for all they do for our show and also for this West Alabama community. All right, with Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Alabama made a major move in the running back recruiting cycle here recently with Justice Haynes, four-star out of Buford, Georgia. Rodney had put out on Tider Insider that Alabama was, kind of sneaking in there. It looked like for a long time, of course, he would go to Georgia. His father was a good player at Georgia. He's from that powerhouse Buford, Georgia program. But, I'm not going to say out of nowhere, but there was no timetable for a commitment. And on Sunday, Rodney, he pulls the trigger, and he pulls the trigger for the Crimson Tide. And his father backed him on Twitter and even said, "Roll Tide." But there's no other way to look at it. This gives Alabama 12 commits now in his class of 2023. He's one of the top running backs, if not the top running back in the country. And much like Alabama, lost out on Peter Woods, edge rusher from Thompson High School in Alabaster, at least for now, kind of caught everybody off guard. I think this caught the Georgia people off guard. I think they really felt like Justice Haynes would commit to the Bulldogs, and he didn't.
Yeah, again, Gary, he's a player that we had been following. We thought there was a chance that perhaps, Alabama had a really good shot there. And as you said, last Friday, we said there are some people who think he may commit, and he did on Sunday. So it was a little bit of a surprise. There's no doubt about that. Again, I know the Georgia fans and even their moderators on their internet sites were stunned with the decision, but this is a really high caliber player. I mean, I think he's a guy, Gary, that, when you look at him, 5-star type talent, his speed, he runs with power, he's very quick, elusive, a guy that plays at a high quality program. So he's going to face really high quality competition there in the state of Georgia.
Yeah, we're going to watch some of his video, and you see the speed. I mean, you see the breakaway speed. He's got the power. This is a top-tier kid. And, Rod, we know Alabama's taken 2 quarterbacks in this class of 2023. It looks like they want to take 2 running backs, and Justice Haynes could be joined by Richard Young. If Haynes isn't the number 1 running back in the country, maybe Young is, out of the state of Florida. Now, Alabama's been recruiting both of them, and not long after he committed to the Crimson Tide, Haynes was out on Twitter saying, "Come join me, Richard Young. I want this to be a 2-headed monster." So a lot of people feel like, well, maybe this hurts Alabama's chances to recruit Richard Young, but I know you don't see it that way.
No, I think Alabama's really in good shape with him. I know Oregon's certainly pushing really hard. Georgia has pushed hard. Ohio State's pushed hard for Richard Young, but I like Alabama's position with him too. And it's like Justice Haynes said, we can be a 2-headed monster at Alabama. And, certainly Alabama has a tradition of using those two and three backs in a rotation. So I don't think it'll sway Richard Young in a negative way at all.
Haynes and Young, Young and Haynes, either way, it sounds good, and it could happen for Alabama. Now, as I said, 12 commits for the Crimson Tide in the class of 2023. Get the first running back, looking for another. Rodney, as we've said many times, including tonight, Alabama is operating kind of in the old-style approach to recruiting. They're not really offering big NIL deals to recruits, but as you alluded to in the top of the show, it has not slowed this class down. They're now firmly in the top 10 and moving up with a bullet, headed toward what looks like could be another top 1, 2, 3, 4 top class.
Yeah, and that number 9 you're watching there is Richard Young out of Lehigh Acres, Florida. So, again, high-quality back as well. But you're right. I mean, Gary, I don't think it's slowed Alabama down a bit. Again, they have lost a couple of players. You're going to lose big-time players in any recruiting season. But I think they're doing extremely well. They're in on several other top players. People say all the time, does Alabama have a chance to have the number 1 class again? I think they really do. And this is surprising to some people because they really thought that NIL would impact Alabama in a negative way. And it has to some extent, but not to the extent that a lot of people thought.
Yeah, Saban just keeps on ticking. All right, Alabama baseball has had 4 current players drafted and 5 signees so far in the MLB first-year player draft. Now, pitcher Connor Prelip, as expected, was the highest Crimson Tider to go, 48th overall, the Twins. But at one time, he was in the discussion as maybe the number 1 overall pick. could he have pitched for Alabama this past season after Tommy John surgery? Some said he could. He didn't. He goes 48th. High school pitcher Walter Ford from Pace, Florida, who signed with the Crimson Tide, went 74th overall, and pitcher Dylan Ray was selected 108th overall by the Diamondbacks. Those were the highest of the Alabama signees and current players to be drafted. But Alabama, turning them out to the big league draft, and I hope, as we've talked about before, this program's close to turning the corner. All right, coming up next, we are going to welcome in your phone calls, emails, and tweets. You'll see the information pop up here on your screen in just a moment. Number is 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. So go ahead and give us a call and get through the program. Phone lines are open. You can also email us, TITV@WVUA23.com. More Tighter Insider TV, SEC Media Days edition, right after this. Well, J.D. Davison wrapped up the NBA Summer League in style as the former Alabama star had his last 2 games in the Summer League. How about this? 45 points and 20 assists. He's on a 2-way contract with the Celtics, but I'm telling you, Rod, he flashed that unbelievable athleticism. He was distributing the ball. I think he's going to have a chance to, as a second-round draft pick, make that Boston Celtics roster this coming season. A lot of talent, just needs some more experience, only 19 years old. And all right, let's head back out there. Let's head out on the phone lines. For our first call tonight, we'll go down to Brent and talk to our friend Rick. Hey, Rick, good evening. How are you?
Fine. How are y'all tonight?
Doing well, my friend.
Good. I've got a question about the pods or the eliminating of divisions. And if it's the top 2 teams every year, it might be Auburn and Georgia, and everybody else will be on the sideline. Is that what they're saying?
Now, I'm not following you. Auburn as the top team? Is he still? Okay. Well, I didn't catch that part. But as far as the pods, I'm going to say this, and I've been saying this on my radio show, and I've told Rodney this. I think once you get to 16 teams, I just don't know about divisions. I mean, I just think that you're going to have to look maybe at the 14 pod system, or if you're in divisions, you're going to have to play an extra. You're going to have to go to 9 conference games. Some adjustments going to have to be made when Texas and Oklahoma come into this conference.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about the pods. Again, I think that it would be the way those pods are arranged in terms of the teams. Gary, I think that would be really interesting. I've seen a lot of mock pods, if you will, and some interesting alignment there. But yeah, it'd be real interesting to see what they eventually do.
All right, let's get to an email. And our email question of the day is brought to you by KDM Services, serving your family like our family. And KDM Services for all your air conditioning and heating needs. Who do you think will win the backup quarterback spot? From Tony in Tuscaloosa. We've been asked this a lot, but it's a good question. Obviously, you got Bryce Young. He's a starter. But you got Jalen Milroe. You got Ty Simpson. I think that those guys are going to battle it out for that number 2 quarterback position, and may the best man win.
Well, I think this year, heading into this year, because Milroe's been in the program, he has a leg up. I think his experience, even though it was limited, again, I think he made a lot of improvement in the spring. But Ty Simpson's certainly a guy that when you look to the future, he's got a load of talent. I think he's a guy that has a chance to become the next great one. And you look at Milroe again, Gary, what the competition eventually next spring is going to be really interesting because he is one of the best athletes. He might be the best overall athlete on the team.
All right. Thanks for the phone call and the email in that segment. Coming up, more of your phone calls and emails and tweets. There, again, the information on your screen. Go ahead and give us a call right now. We'd love to hear from you. And more TITV on this Alabama Day at SEC Media Days. Tuesday evening in Tuscaloosa. We're back right after this. Sweet Home Alabama, a team of primarily former college players from Alabama, featuring 3 former Crimson Tiders, Mikel Torrance, Justin Knox, and Justin Tubbs, playing in the basketball tournament, TBT. 64 teams competing for a first-place prize of $1 million. All the games broadcast on the ESPN Family Networks. Got underway last night for Sweet Home Alabama, but not a good night as they took on Zip 'em Up, which was made up mainly of former Xavier players, up at Xavier. You see the big X there. So on the road, it was Xavier's team, Zip 'em Up, taking it over Sweet Home Alabama, 94-61. So Sweet Home is eliminated from that tournament. All right, welcome back in to TITV with Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris. Phone lines are open, 205-348-9882. I'm surprised I'm saying that on SEC Media Days night, but they are, 205-348-WVUA if you want to get through. In the meantime, let's get to an email. And this email comes to us Can we get to the email? Anybody? All right. Well, we got an email. I know I saw it earlier. It was from Leslie in Dallas, Texas. Wanted to know why Drew Sanders transferred to Arkansas. And Leslie, I'll be honest with you. I've asked myself that question. He's a terrific football player, was having an unbelievable year last year after he stepped in for Chris Allen in the Miami game, and then he gets hurt. Of course, Dallas Turner steps in for him, but I don't know. I thought he had a bright future here. And, Rodney, do you have an answer to that question?
Well, I think what happened, you kind of laid it out there. I think when he got injured, unfortunately, because he stepped in really, really well for Chris Allen, but when that injury occurred, when he hurt his hand, Gary, Dallas Turner emerged, and Dallas Turner had 8.5 sacks, one of the top freshmen in the country, certainly a future star. And I just think that Drew Sanders assumed that he wouldn't have an opportunity to see much playing time. So he went to Arkansas. But, like you said, Gary, I mean, there was still plenty of opportunities here. I think at Arkansas they're going to move him to inside linebacker, and he should have a great career.
All right, Leslie, thanks for that email. We'll be back to wrap up this edition of TITV right after this on WVUA 23. This past weekend, Championship Sunday at the Pritchett Moore Men's City Invitational at Indian Hills Country Club in Alabama fielded the final singles match in the highest division. Paul Hahn, who played at Alabama, taking on current Alabama men's assistant coach Ezekiel Gillis, and this was quite a match. But Gillis able to edge Hahn in the first set 7-5 and then closed him out 6-2 to win the championship in a highly competitive match. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of TITV from SEC Media Days in Atlanta and here from our studio at Bryant-Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa. Don't forget, if you missed the program or you're just tuning in or you want to catch a replay tonight at 10:30 after the news at 10 or online anytime at WVUA23.com. Rodney will also have it at TiderInsider.com. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Thanks for watching. Have a good night, everybody. We'll talk to you again next week on Tider Insider TV.